7 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember Sayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. Community comment. We do not have any members of the community here tonight, so we will breeze through that one. Presentations and reports. Item 5.1, construction update. The Jonathan Carver Parkway Improvement Project. Interim City Engineer, Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a couple news and notes from the project. And all this is weather dependent, but paving is scheduled to take place south of the roundabout, actually tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. Gardenier, the landscape contractor for the city, is going to begin working this week. So you'll start noticing work in the roundabout and then heading north on Jonathan Carver Parkway. You may also have noticed that the signal system, so at 212 and Levi Griffin, were painted black to match the new signal systems at Ironwood and Monroe Drive. Substantial completion is planned for mid-November, so that's when the project, pending any kind of remaining punch list items, would be done. And Bolton and Mink, or primarily Nicole Kraus, is starting to work on kind of the outline of a ribbon cutting ceremony sometime for the council and county board this fall. So if you have any preferences on time of day, that would be helpful, because there's a kind of a two worlds colliding in a sense, where the county board usually meets during the day and the council meets in the evening. So just want to be sensitive to your schedules related to that. So if you want to think about that and let me know. I don't certainly have to decide tonight. But if there are dates you know that you're going to be not available, that'd be helpful as they try to start narrowing.
Do you have an idea kind of when? Like end of October or?
You're probably looking at early to mid-November.
Okay.
As in,
November 1st through the 15th.
I'm just,
As in hunting.
I will,
Oh.
no. I'm gonna be out of town the first Friday, Saturday, Sunday in November.
But it'll be
Decided
it'll be a
Friday,
weekday
Saturday, Sunday, yeah.
for sure. Likely
Friday would be, a Friday afternoon, like late October would be all right.
the county board typically meets on Tuesdays, so that's probably where their first request would be. Doesn't mean,
I'll work when you get out here, so.
Why don't we just email you?
Okay, yeah.
Yes, let's just email you. Okay.
Any questions? If I can't answer them, I'm happy to do some research and get back to you.
Is that going to be closed then, both lanes while they're paving south of the roundabout?
South of the roundabout is closed right now already.
Okay.
It's 2-lane traffic, so they're going to be paving the southbound or west lanes.
Okay.
But the east lanes are going to remain open while they're paving, so it shouldn't impact traffic at all.
Okay.
Do you know when we'll see traffic switched to that
I
side?
don't.
Okay. You don't have to follow up on that. I was just
Okay.
curious. And then, we always have said substantial completion by mid-November. Are we going to see random punch list items happening on there next year?
Yes, 100, absolutely.
Okay.
Will the final pavement coat happen this fall, or
Yes. Their intention is to pave the main line.
the whole thing?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
That's it.
Okay.
Great engineers.
No public hearings tonight. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make motion to approve the consent agenda.
A motion by Councilmember Henry
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving right along, business items. 8.1, the preliminary levy certification. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilors. I have a presentation prepared, but if you want an abbreviated form, I can present that.
I come from an abbreviated form only because we've been seeing this, so
You know-
it's helpful not having it all.
as much as I want to say abbreviated, I think we owe it to anybody who might want to try to see this online or watch the video who would be new to this and doesn't understand that although we've seen this 3 times already, they're going to see the preliminary levy certification on the agenda, so I think we need the unabridged. But y'all can feel free to.
I'm fine with it somewhere in between.
Okay,
Yep,
I'll be expedient.
okay.
So just an overview for folks that are maybe watching for the first time and kind of wondering, where money goes related to the general fund. You can see some of the categories here: fire protection, administration, law enforcement, etc. The one thing that we really want to point out is that these are primarily funded from property taxes, state aids, permits, fees and fines, but your utility bill, so what you pay on what folks will pay for their monthly water use, sanitary sewer, and stormwater systems are not funded by their property taxes. As you know, Council, we have those in enterprise funds, and we go through a separate exercise related to that, so that when someone pays their water bill, it's not going to pay for fire protection or coverage from the sheriff's office or to help for a park improvement, et cetera. It's contained for those specific activities. And then kind of, as the mayor alluded to, the budget has been a long process for someone who maybe is just starting to look at this now. We've actually kicked off the budget in late May, early June. We did a presentation to the council kind of outlining kind of the big picture pieces. The council gave some feedback. And then we also did a refresher on our existing financial plan, which is a agenda item for tonight to adopt your updated capital or long-term financial plan and capital plan. And then throughout July and August, our team conducted a series of reviews and research related to department budgets. So each department had Vicki and Aaron, Chad and Callie went through their budgets. We had multiple meetings and talked about different strategies, which landed us to early August, where we went through 2 drafts of a general fund budget. Looked at an updated capital plan, and so the combination of those things lands us to where we're at tonight on September 20th, which is the consideration adopting of the preliminary levy. And I think a nuance here that's important to note is that we're talking about the general fund budget, but you're really not adopting the budget. All you're doing is saying, this is the cap, or this is the budget for our budget. This is the most in property taxes that we're willing to consider. Doesn't mean you're approving that amount tonight, but the most that you're willing to consider going into the last few months of your budget. And why that's important is in early November, sometimes late October, truth and taxation statements are sent out to residents. So based on that preliminary levy, a calculation is made, and the county takes that calculation along with calculations made by the school district and Carver County, along with some other taxing districts, and they'll send out, based on those preliminary levies, this truth and taxation statement that says what the impact to their taxes would be for their home, as well as a date and a time for a meeting for each of those jurisdictions. And ours is scheduled for Monday, December 6th. You take in all that feedback that you get, and then in December, that final meeting in December, you'll set your final budget and levy. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. And then just kind of highlighting again, very unique to a city in the metropolitan area. Carver property owners don't pay any money towards franchise fees, which is the exception, not the rule. Not proposing that the city does that. We went through an exercise a couple years ago, but I do think it's unique in that sometimes a neighboring city or a peer city, their tax base or their preliminary levies will be different because they have additional sources of revenue, and so it sometimes appears that their property taxes are lower. But I'm inviting the council and the community to think of that as kind of the total package. If they're paying, $50 worth of franchise fees a month, what does that look like compared to a total property tax bill in the city of Carver? A slide here that the council has seen numerous times just looks at market value changes, indicating that we had close to 7% in new construction value, and then on average just over 2% in market change in the city of Carver. You can see here taxable market value, how we compare. Not surprising that it's kind of somewhat based on population, with Chanhassen and Chaska being the largest cities in the county, Victoria and Waconia to follow, and then Carver. And so, again, just kind of maybe a commercial, it just shows kind of the impetus to develop our tax base. Commercial, industrial properties are critical to that, in addition to the residential growth that we've been experiencing. And feel free to, I know you've seen this a couple times, but if you have questions or comments, feel free to interrupt. Local government aid will remain consistent with previous years' revenue projection, or previous year's revenue amounts at $160,000. We're projecting strong, continued strong growth in new housing, so we have permanent revenues going up. We are projecting a loss in some state aid funding status related to kind of where we're at 5,000. We always got some pass-through money from Carver County. We'll end up getting a larger amount that will segregate into your pavement management plan that we'll talk about later tonight. But the $16,000 in this kind of regular street aid we're projecting will not be included in your 22 revenue. We're also showing a $75,000 transfer from your special capital project fund and tax relief, basically kind of mitigating the impact of the levy. And then kind of another item related to the pavement management plan that shows a $100,000 contribution from the special capital fund to kind of fund that plan. So at the end of the day, you'd have about $235,000 in your special capital plan, or capital fund, excuse me. And that doesn't include kind of the true up after you go through the 2021 audit. So likely to have a surplus that will add to that fund balance. Any questions before I move on? So a kind of an overview of our preliminary revenues as reflected in our preliminary budget. Debt service. So you'll notice on the kind of the bottom right, $323,000 related to the Jonathan Carver, excuse me, improvement project. And so that included a 4-lane improvement to JCP, that roundabout, the trail improvements, including the new pedestrian underpass, but also improvements to Dahlgren Road, Monroe Drive, and 6th Street West. And then here you can see our debt service levy history. Again, 26.7% of that 27.3% is related to the Jonathan Carver Parkway, the new debt related to that project, and then our debt service over time. And then kind of getting into street maintenance levy, a different kind of format for that. Rather than including street maintenance as a line item in our public services department budget, we're pulling it out and having it as a separate levy as recommended by our contracted finance director, Steve McDonald. So you'll notice in further slides that the general fund levy is going down, but that's more or less a representation of pulling the street maintenance budget out of that and having it as its own line item. So that was $120,000 in 2021. The council, based on your preliminary discussions for the pavement management plan, calls for a $100,000 increase. And then along with that contribution from the special capital fund, you'd be in a position to fund a project in the Eagle Ridge neighborhood for just over $550,000. And that's indicated in purple on the graphic to the right. Part-time, seasonal, and full-time employee pay, we're doing across the board 3% increase, which is consistent with the new collective bargaining agreement that the council agreed to earlier in the year. Employee health insurance, this can be a floating number. We're kind of, knock on wood, hoping this goes a little bit down. It could be a change that you notice by the time we get to the final budget and levy, but we're planning for an 8% increase with employer contributions consistent with years past. New staffing requests, as we've talked about kind of throughout 2021, adding the position of a finance director, which was identified in the city's strategic plan to alleviate workload and a reliance on contracted services. The transformation of a part-time public services tech into a full-time position, and then adding a seasonal position just dedicated to landscape landscaping and grounds maintenance for all the kind of the landscaped areas within the community. Sheriff's Office, our service model would remain consistent as far as funding 2 full-time deputies. The budget remains relatively the same with an increase of less than 1% for 2022. And then again, this is just kind of a spotlight on different pieces. There are many components within the general fund budget, but this outlines a couple of the higher priced items that are kind of outside of this normal staff pay, insurance, etc. And then an overview of our preliminary expenditures for the general fund. And then the general fund history. And this was related to that comment. You'll see that 8.4% drop. And that's primarily due to removing street maintenance out and having it as its own levy item. Then you can see our history related to the general levy. And then kind of a really important slide is kind of showing you have the general fund levy, the debt service levy, and then the street maintenance levy. Gets you to that total levy of $3,604,550 for an increase of just over $383,000 or 11.9% over 2021. And then we did some calculations on how that would affect our average valued home in Carver, which right now is $328,500 compared to from last year compared to what our estimate or preliminary number would be for this year. And based on our calculations, there'd be an estimated $93 increase if your home was valued at $325 or $328,500 last year and this year. We also do a calculation to show what that increase would be if your home went up by the average value amount that we alluded to in a slide earlier of that just over 2%. And under that scenario, there'd be a $150 increase. One of the things that you may remember when we get to kind of the end of the budget process, when the truth and taxation statements come out, is we do a cross section of different valued properties to show you their 2021 tax and with their estimated 2022 pay. So we'll go from like the $150,000 home to the $200,000, the $350,000 to $600,000. So it'll give you an idea of what the impact is at different amounts. I will add though that each home has kind of its own story, and that someone might have added a bathroom or finished their basement or added a deck, and so there'll be variations that you notice within the cross section of those properties. How we stack up to other Carver County cities, you can see where we were at last year for a tax rate of 45.28 and our preliminary at 48.12. And then a slide that we've added this year is how we compare to our peer cities. So you'll notice these cities from when we look at rates and fees, when we look at salary surveys, etc. And you'll see how Carver stacks up there using the same data. Also, kind of a comparison that we added this year thanks to a suggestion from Councilmember McKnight. Looking at the city's taxes over time, you can see a relative drop of nearly or just over 15%. And I know there's this anecdotally that there's commentary out there about as the city's population grows, tax base grows, our taxes should go down. And I think that is true. I think the thing where we can trip up as a community is at the pace that everyone wants it to go down at. And so, which is subjective, and I understand arguments pro and con, but I do think that it's very factual based on this data to say that city taxes have gone down over the last 10 years, upwards of 15%. And then levy scenarios, I know there's been a lot of work done. The council spent a lot of time looking at this, but there are different scenarios that get you to different levy impacts, different tax impacts related to the general fund budget. And here are a couple of those scenarios. And then one of the things that we've done for quite some time is representing city services as a monthly bill. I know there's the water and sewer utility, but if you do all your general fund services as a monthly bill, I think what this chart shows you is that it's similar to an electric bill, a water bill, cable, etc. But it gives you a breakdown of how your tax dollars are really working on a day-to-day basis. So in your packet, there's a resolution for your consideration that would adopt the preliminary levy and authorize the city clerk to submit it to the county for certification. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Or a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 141-21, certifying the 2022 preliminary tax levy in the amount of $3,604,550.
We have a motion by Councilmember Mock
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? I just, again, would like to say if it looks like we're going through this very quickly, we are, but it's because we have literally seen this. This is the third or fourth time we've
Yep.
seen it. So the portion for discussion and kind of horse trading and narrowing, sharpening the pencil took place in June and July and August. So
Yep.
just if anybody's watching, it's not that we're rushing through this. We've seen this a few times. So with that, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, moving on to 8.2, the long-term financial plan. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Your comments are a good transition into our long-term financial plan that really kind of shows over the last several months how the council's been intentional about planning projects, capital equipment expenditures, and how those plans would correlate to impacts to rates, fees, and property taxes, et cetera. So what's the purpose of the long-term financial plan? It creates an opportunity for the council to discuss and prioritize capital and operational needs. So as a growing city, we're going to have many needs related to infrastructure. It's how do we prioritize them? What are their impacts, and how do we move the puzzle pieces together to make it comfortable for you as the elected representatives of this community to go back to residents and say this is what we need to do. So we go through this analysis. We've gone through several work sessions where we looked at impacts to property taxes, rates and charges. We developed strategies and alternatives to meet infrastructure needs and look at situations where we might create a financial hardship. I'll point back to the last year's long-term financial plan where we had or it was probably 2 years ago now, right before we built the water treatment plant. Council wasn't comfortable with the impact that the connection fees and rates would have related to funding the water treatment plant. I don't know why I pointed at Chad because you didn't cause the problem, but you're the water guy. So, but because of that, we went back to the drawing board, looked at a different design of the water treatment plant, and shaved off several million of dollars related to the water project, and now we're in a better place because we went through that process. One of the things you've heard me say a number of times is that you're not approving any specific project by adopting this plan. You're saying your intention is to plan for it, both financially and by kind of policy and practice, but we still need to bring these projects back to you. They still need to go through a budget process. And then when we get to the point where maybe plans and specs need to be ordered, et cetera, you'll still have to go through the multiple steps to approve plans and specs, award a bid, et cetera, et cetera. So just kind of an overview of the top plan investments by cost. We have the certified levy in year 2026. As all of you know, that's not a kind of a guaranteed year. Hopefully it's sooner. It could be later. But we feel like that's the ceiling for the city's local share of what would be upwards of a $12 million improvement project. Public Services Building Addition along with the Turnout Gear Building Addition planned for 2023. So that's a building to the west of the existing Public Services building for storage of vehicles and equipment. And then a addition to the fire department space on the south side of the building for their turnout gear to remove that out of an area where diesel exhaust and fumes are in. The downtown park community space of just over $2.5 million planned for 2026, primarily contingent upon availability of park dedication fees and funds. The city has a contribution into that, but at least based on council feedback to date, we're not in a position that we'd likely bond for that. One of the pieces that's kind of right up and ready to go is the Ironwood Park development project. So the Parks Commission is going to take another look at that at their next meeting, but we're planning to complete that project in 2022. And then the council will have an update, I believe it's the second meeting in October, related to the County Road 40 turn back. And we're also going to provide an update on the 6th Street West project. And then kind of a prelude to the next agenda item, the street maintenance. You can see that a really, significant increase to the city's street maintenance projects. That's different from past years where we were kind of at that 100,000 or 80,000 range. You can see a significant investment into the streets in the community. And then the 3rd Street Bridge is also something that we're working with the county on, related to the bridge near Harvey's, to replace that aging. I think that bridge is over 100 years old at this point, so something that we'll be working on. So obviously there's a lot of projects contained within your packet related to equipment, but these are the top by cost and the associated year. Staffing plan, as you noticed in the general fund budget, we have the 2 positions for finance director, and then the evolution of the part-time position to a full-time for the public services tech. We have a building permit technician / admin assistant plan for 2023, and then 2 similar positions in 2025 for public services tech 2 and admin assistant. And then planning for a communications specialist, kind of an entry-level position, but we are spending some resources developing communication pieces, which I think we can all agree is a critical part of how we're delivering communication to residents. And so perhaps an opportunity to come in, tailor that to our specific needs, but also maybe save some money just based on the amount we're using specialists in that area. And then rate and fee projections that the council went over at the last work session. You'll see the 2022 rates and connection fees embedded into your annual review of your rate schedule or fee schedule that Vicki Sanz-Iden leads for the city council that you'll be considering later this year. Rate and fee projections related to sanitary sewer. Let me just head back for the water connections, planning for a 3% increase, which I want to highlight that kind of going back to previous plans. We were looking at plans where you were at 5, 8, and in some cases double-digit increases. So kudos to the council for, I'll steal the term from the mayor, sharpening the pencils on kind of creating a workable, at least from my perspective, plan to fund some significant infrastructure now and future and into the future. 3% increase to the sanitary sewer rates, as well as a 5% increase to the flat rate related to stormwater for both residential and commercial. So here's a kind of a side-by-side related to the 21 rates and then the proposed 22 rates. Again, you're not adopting the 22 rates in this forum. That'll be done or be considered later during the process that Vicki leads, but it does give you an idea of how to compare that, and you can see on average about a $3.79 increase. A new slide that we've added since we last met is we did an analysis. Brenda Good kind of connected through with each of these cities. These are peer group cities to get an idea of what it costs for 8,000 gallons of water in each of these cities, and I'll kind of let the numbers do the talking. The only thing I will point out is that, when I hear water's high in Carver, I typically will respond with, well, compared to what city? And the typical response is Chaska and Eden Prairie. And as you can see, Chaska and Eden Prairie aren't on here. And I would acknowledge there are months where, I don't love paying the water bill either. But I do think that this provides a little bit of context for cities that are growing, that are adding water treatment plants, that are having to, in some cases, build wastewater treatment plants, how we stack up, and some of the challenges of kind of going through kind of the growing years as a kind of a burgeoning suburb in the metro area. And then a look at estimated tax rates based on the plan. You can kind of see where we're heading in 2022 and then the final year in 2026. And And I kind of would note, I know some of these projects are related to the enterprise funds, but if you think about really some significant kind of once-in-a-generation type investments of infrastructure with the City Hall, Jonathan Carver Parkway, water treatment plant, so that combination along with a growing population, you've really done a lot of the heavy lifting already, and so now it's that second piece of getting that tax base to build to help kind of spread out the burden related to paying back that debt on that infrastructure. And then here's kind of a peer cities comparison. You saw this in the general fund or the preliminary levy slide, so I'll pass through this. So again, there's a lot of data in that long-term financial plan that's in your packet, the complete plan. There's also a reference sheet that just shows kind of the capital plan portion of that plan. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that. We're asking the council to consider adopting the 2022 through 2026 plan tonight.
Questions, comments, or a motion? Maybe I'll just make a comment before I think you're about to make the motion here too. This is something that we have seen. This is at least the second time, if not more like the third time, I think, if memory serves, that we're seeing this. So again, the time for us to ask those questions and to, question why the levy is in 2026 versus 2024 has come, and we've asked those questions.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 to 2026 long-term financial plan.
Got a motion by Councilmember McKnight.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember Sayre. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Do you need a break? I feel like this is a lot for you.
Yeah, council, if you wouldn't mind letting me punt and
Sure.
taking care of 8.4 and 8.5.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So let's skip ahead. Please don't let me forget 8.3, but let's go to 8.4, the Metro Net Agreement. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, excuse me. So what we have tonight is a fiber agreement with MetroNet. Last June of 2020, the city entered into a new franchise agreement with MetroNet. It was called Jaguar Communications before, and they were acquired by MetroNet. This agreement is pretty straightforward. It's a 2-page document, and what they're proposing is to construct a handful of dark fiber routes to different locations in the city of Carver, all public facilities, to provide the city with a public communications network that would serve these sites. The sites are listed on Exhibit A of the agreement. There's 2 city facilities and there's 6 different parks. And they're going to do it for no cost at all to the city. What they're asking for in exchange, excuse me, is that the city waive its right-of-way permitting fees that it would otherwise be paying, MetroNet would be paying in order to build out their network. And they're going to be building this network out through the franchise agreement. That's an obligation that they have. And as part of that, like I said, they're willing to add these dark fibers to the city facilities. So I had a conversation with City Manager Merrick about this. In my view, and he can maybe touch on this a little bit if he wants. I don't mean to put him on the spot, but we're not giving a whole lot up here. There's not, the city doesn't charge much for right-of-way permittees like MetroNet for the project that they're obligated to build under the franchise that they have with the city of Carver. And what we're getting in exchange is actually a pretty good, very good deal. In other words, they're going to build these dark fiber lines through these 8 locations in the city, which will provide the ability in the future to what the gurus call light up these sites, which means essentially you're going to bring communication network into your city facilities. So that will happen over time. They'll build these, it's my understanding, they'll build all these now or very soon. It's my understanding they're hoping to try to do this before some of the snow flies even this fall. And over time, when these needs are determined by the city to light up the sites and bring communication networks into to city facilities, that will happen. The way that works is they'll coordinate with the county and Carver Link to maintain those sites, to bring everything online. And I think over time this would happen. I'm not sure exactly what the timelines might be. I don't know if Brent knows that, but it's a pretty straightforward agreement that really contemplates those two things. They'll build the dark fibers. We'll waive right-of-way permits for all the work that they'll be doing under the franchise. So happy to answer any questions. This agreement, it's not, I think it's very close to final form. We're just waiting on their attorneys to bless what we have. This is a very similar agreement that they just entered into, MetroNet just entered into with the city of Chanhassen. I made a few changes because Chanhassen was entering into a franchise agreement simultaneously. So some of the details in the agreement were a little bit different. I made some tweaks to clarify those things. So the motion that I'm recommending tonight is to approve this agreement, but subject to any minor revisions that may be deemed appropriate by myself and necessary based on their attorney's comments. If there's anything substantive or significant that they change or want to change, I would of course bring it back to the council. I wouldn't have you approve something and then change, the structure of the deal, which I don't expect to happen, but that's why the council action tonight has a little bit of flexibility to make a few minor changes if we need to.
Great. Questions, comments?
I have a question. For the permitting fees, is there a ballpark number, and then would there be one for each of the locations? So is it like the permitting fee times 8? What are we kind of dollar-wise?
Brent, you can.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. Our standard practice is to, when we get a permit application in, we don't have a fee. It's a straight pass-through cost, so we'll take that permit application. Typically, it's Aaron Schmidt with Bolton and Mink that will review it, and then we just charge actual time as a pass-through cost, so it's not based on the scope or size of the project. So, and then since I'm giving Aaron's pavement management plan presentation, I'll trade that for permit fee review, see how that works. But I'm not, I wouldn't expect it to be any more than a couple $100. I think it's a significant issue because I think in other cities, it's quite a bit, it could be quite a bit more, and so it's a really important, I think Dave could probably expand on that if he wants, but it's a significant issue for MetroNet to make sure that occurs. It just doesn't happen to be a significant cost or issue for the city.
And just to build upon that question a little bit, it would be very expensive for the city to install these dark fibers on its own and pay that out of pocket. I don't know exactly how much. I've heard some numbers thrown around. I'm not sure how accurate those are. Those came from folks that were outside of the city. But overall, this is a pretty good deal.
Can I just, I know you're for the line, can I just ask, what is dark fiber? It's the fiber that's there without it being turned on or operational?
Now you're testing.
There's no
me
light going
because
through it.
I didn't take dark fibers in law school, but it's my understanding it provides for the city to run its internal communication network. It's not like public fibers that allow internet to run. I don't know if
That's correct.
If you had to grade him, he's got an 8.
Chad, would you mind sharing, because I think it's a really interesting story of like how you plan to integrate this technology in with our infrastructure, lift stations, et cetera?
Yeah, because my follow-up question is, why do we need this at parks? So I think you're anticipating my next question.
Well, we use it on the utility side of it, so Dave was correct. It's designated just for the city to use. So how we could use it at the park would be all of our Salto locks. We'd be able to have Wi-Fi hubs there, so if parents are playing with their kids, they'd be able to log on. But the biggest and best thing for us is being able to have that Wi-Fi for our locking system for the doors.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Well, I don't. Joy had her hand up and you were looking other way. So.
Joy, go. Okay.
I'm assuming that MetroNet wants us to waive the fees, and they're willing to put these fibers in place because they're already trenching in fiber.
it's going to be simpler for them to do it while they're trenching the rest of the fiber.
That's my
It
understanding.
certainly will be. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the other benefit that we get, right? Is they're going to be trenching fiber across our city. This is a lot of parks across pretty much everything other than maybe Ironwood, right? So this could potentially provide additional services to residents and businesses.
I mean, that's a great point, Councilmember McKnight. That's their kind of the intent of this project is to basically light up the whole community for MetroNet internet service. So in addition to other providers,
Right.
I would say that's the primary benefit. The secondary benefit is related to Chad's comments that we're getting fiber to our lift stations, our other key infrastructure as a kind of a secondary benefit, but I would say almost to the point of economic development to have this fiber internet in our community is just a great benefit that some cities are really struggling just to provide a tier below as it relates to internet service. So especially with work at home, online school, etc., this is a great thing for our community.
Yep. That was my only
good.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Could we add Ironwood, or like why didn't we? Because if this is something where eventually, if Ironwood gets to a stage where they have, some type of structure that we want to block, that.
So I don't think we have I don't think we don't have plans for MetroNet, at least not or at least that I know of. So we could certainly add that. I mean, this agreement isn't ensuring services to certain sites that I know of. This is just basically ensuring that we're not going to charge fees to MetroNet for right-of-way permits. Am I missing anything on that?
Well, the two components is the fees issue, but also they're agreeing to install the dark fiber strands for the city under this agreement. We have the 8 locations listed here. That was a list provided by, I believe, in consultation with city staff. It was provided by Randy Lease at Carver.
Well, so related to that comment, we can certainly have Chad and connect with Randy Lease with Carver County and make sure that we're covering that. I mean, great point. We're considering adding a park shelter at Ironwood Park.
And then maybe Lions Park too. I looked. I don't think I see their address, but I might not know Lions Park address.
So we'll do kind of a audit, if you will, of those sites, and as Dave is kind of wrapping up the fine points of that agreement, we can kind of in connection with that verify our locations. So
yeah, I was told that Randy was going to look at these locations before the agreement was finalized to confirm the list was final, so that we could add sites to it potentially, depending on what his answers are on those questions.
Well, I'm wondering too, when I look at this, 300 Main Street East is Riverside? Is that Riverside?
It is only because that's the one I had to look up.
Okay,
It would be.
okay.
Yes.
So, and it says we're running here, so if we have to, is this like anywhere where we're getting 2 bargaining chips of like this for that, or?
they'll provide service to wherever. I mean, 300 Main Street East, I'm assuming is related to the lift station that we have there.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, that makes sense.
Any other questions, Glenn? All right, I'd entertain a motion. You didn't.
I'll make a motion to approve the fiber agreement with CMN-RUS Inc., aka MetroNet, and authorize the mayor and the city clerk to execute said agreement, subject to any revisions deemed appropriate and necessary by the city attorney and the finalization of the parks list.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Councilmember McKnight and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion?
Aye. Oh, sorry.
You're very
Hold on.
excited, very excited.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say sign. All right. Motion carries. All right, moving on to 8.5, the Energy Assistance Program. Ms. Sons-Eiden.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to go over just a couple of highlights from the last page of the document here from the packet, and it's really a summary of the information that highlights the benefits of this program. And the city received this information from the Minnesota Department of Commerce, and really what it is, it's the state of Minnesota received about a little over $14.5 million to allow the city to help its residents pay some of their utility bills. And as you can see, it allows for past and current fees along with usage charges, fees, deposits, and so on. And the flyer that we originally got indicated it goes up into $1,200. We have recently received some information that it may even be higher than that. The state of Minnesota is currently working through some of the details with this, so we're still waiting to hear what that cap number will be. But initially, that's what it was set at. Unfortunately, it doesn't pay for anything other. It listed some ideas or items like trash and cable service. It's not eligible for that. So how will these benefits be distributed? The City of Carver will be working with the CAP agency, and the CAP agency is the one that is actually going to receive the application, determine the eligibility of the resident. They will be contacting the City of Carver. We would provide information that verifies, what's their account number, what are their current fees, when it was due, and so on. But then the CAP agency is the one that really goes through the motions to go through that approval process. Once the applicant is approved, then that check would be written to the City of Carver, and then the City of Carver would apply it toward their account. So basically, the city is sort of at the end of that process, although we will be using our resources to promote this product. I understand by the end of this month, the end of September, we will be receiving some more informational pieces from the state of Minnesota and from the CAP agency, who I've spoken with a couple of different times in regard to this program. They will be helping us with how do you advertise this, what's the wording. Basically, the application will be available on a website, and the applicant will go and fill that information out, goes to the CAP agency, they will contact us, we will provide some pieces of information, and then eventually, if they're approved, the check will come to the City of Carver. So I would be happy to answer any questions. I know that was a quick overview. What I would be asking tonight would be for two motions. One, to actually approve the agreement that was in the packet to allow us to work with the CAP agency. And then the second one is to direct staff, if you so choose, that you would want us to be a part of this program. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a first quick question. It's for you, Dave, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up earlier, but I'm on the CAP agency board. Do I need to abstain from this one?
I don't see why there's I don't believe there's a conflict.
Okay.
Based on, so you're just a board member of the CAP agency? I don't think there's a financial conflict, so off the cuff, I'm going to say I don't believe that there's any reason for you to abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Questions, comments?
The only question I have is, it says it can pay for past due and current water charges. Is
Correct.
there any amount too far back? I mean, I know this is trying to address the pandemic, but is there anything to say, that this fund can only be used for water charges incurred from March 2020 onward or something like that? There's nothing in there as far as you know?
I didn't see that. I think that would be something that the CAP agency would look. They have to follow certain criteria in order to determine what's eligible.
Okay.
It does get a little tricky, and I discussed this with the city attorney, that the City of Carver, we certify our delinquent accounts. And so those funds would be really owed to Carver County, but the city, I talked with the state and with CAP agency and with Carver County to determine that we can actually then still collect that money and then pay those certifications. So it's going to be a little bit of tracking on our end for those residents that are approved, but we certainly can make that happen. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
And my guess would be that last year you would have gone through the certification process, so any delinquent accounts now are all going to have become delinquent during the pandemic, or at least since start of 2021.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be an issue with the timing of it all.
Okay.
But Vicky's correct about how there's got to be a lot of communication, I think, between not only the CAP agency and the city, but also the county, because there's this weird overlap in when taxes are going to be certified and when everything is owed. So I think everyone seems to be in lockstep, which is really, I'm impressed. I think there's a lot of scrambling happening too right now, because this is a brand new program. There's a lot of money that was given to the state, and so things are seeming to come together pretty nicely.
Okay. That's all I had.
Chrissy? First, I just want to comment, and this is my opinion only, that it just looks like the feds are printing some more money here. So I don't particularly care for this program at that level. But as it has come to Minnesota, and we have it, and obviously we're going to put it to good use, I do worry a little bit about the fact of where's the cutoff? So let's say I'm a month behind now, but all of a sudden I get to, how long do I have to use this? Do I just quit paying my bill now, hoping to receive some funds from somewhere else so I don't have to pay it? And by that, I don't mean me, I'm being general. I mean, have you heard anything about how long can they, I mean, we see it begins October 1st, but when does it end?
I think it's going to end when the 14.5 million is gone,
Okay.
which being a statewide program, that won't take very long. At
Okay.
least that's my guess. I don't know what the total estimated amount of delinquent utility bills statewide is, but I think it's a lot.
Okay.
And so my guess, first come, first serve. They're going to prioritize those that are disconnected.
Okay.
And I don't think it's going to last very long, to be honest. But I could be wrong. I don't know if Vicki has a better grasp of the numbers. But
No, I was just going to reiterate what was said in regard to the prioritization. They are looking at those that are being disconnected first.
Okay.
So I don't know where this is all going to fall. Right now, the city has not been disconnecting water. We've been certifying last year in 2020. We'll be doing that again in 2021. How is that going to play out with this program? I don't know.
Sure. And then how are we planning to get this information out to our residents? Have we thought about what our communication is going to be for that?
What we are currently doing, and I discussed this with the city attorney as well, we're going to put something in the newsletter that is basically introducing the program follow the city's website and social media for more details. They'll have my contact information. Then once we get the information at the end of this month from the state of Minnesota and from the CAP agency, we will utilize their suggestions on how to communicate this. What's the best way to communicate this? What verbiage do we use? Where do we direct the residents?
Okay, so maybe I'm a little bit confused then. So the CAP agency is the overall distributor of these funds?
Correct.
Yes. So taking city staff time for you to answer, should it just be a pass-through that goes to CAP then to take care of so that we're not spending city time dealing with a program that doesn't start with us?
Pretty much, I think we had intended to help communicate this to get the word out, but then once the resident is interested in the program, we would then basically point them to the CAP agency. The CAP agency will take it from there, and then once they are approved, then the city would receive the funds. So I think if residents have questions or concerns, those would be directed to the CAP agency. We're not going to be able to answer, where's their application process? Why did they or did they not get approved? I think those questions will have to go to them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a comment.
Can I just go?
Yeah.
I had a question. So, Vicki, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but because of the prioritization of this program with the folks being disconnected going first, and then with the pending disconnection, I see everybody in Carver down at priority number 3. Do you know? Did they give you any idea if there was enough money to get that far down the list?
No, there really was no information about, like City Attorney Anderson mentioned, we don't know what's the total number of delinquent utilities in the state of Minnesota.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Just more of a comment on that conversation about how far can they go back? Is there a look back? How long can they do it? I did see in the overview slide that there's a bullet point that says up to $1,200, but I don't like that it doesn't say is that for resident, per person. It just says program, so I don't know if that means they can re-enter the program, but it looks like there's kind of a ceiling.
Yeah, I think some of that, if you looked at the agreement, I think it talks about the CAP agency needs to follow their policies and procedures, and a lot of that is probably something that they need to manage on their end. I don't have all of the details on that, but I'm sure once we get into it, if people have questions, we'll probably find out a little bit more about that. But I agree that this is probably going to go pretty fast based on the current situation.
All right. Any other questions, Glenn?
I just would like to caution how we market this, because we don't want to generate people to say, hey, there's a federal program out there that if you're delinquent on your water, they'll pay it. And all of a sudden we go from 3 people that have been disconnected to 33 people looking for federal money. Just be careful how it's marketed. You might have a better grip on targeted people that you can just reach out to as well. I don't know if that's
That's not.
I'm not
All the
comfortable
programs
with that.
go?
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, I think this is a federal program. All other communities in
Got it.
my mind are gonna
All right.
broadcast it openly. All right, with that, Vicki needs a couple of motions, unless there's further discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Department of Commerce Energy Assistance Program agreement between the City of Carver and the SCD CAP Agency for the Water Assistance Program.
Got a motion by Councilmember Sayer
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
I'll make a motion to authorize staff to participate in the Water Assistance Program.
I'll second.
Same, we have a motion by Councilmember Sayer and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, back up to number 8.3, the pavement management plan with interim city engineer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's interesting that there's these three projects related to the budget, long-term financial plan and pavement management plan that the council's been spending months working on. They all landed on the same meeting night, so. As you can see, we've been meeting since May on the pavement management plan, and I think it's significant that, in the city's history, we've never had such a plan, and so the amount of time and consideration that it takes to do that is significant. So we're at tonight where we're looking to adopt the final plan. The primary pavement management goals are to extend that pavement life, reduce the cost. We want to avoid situations where a street has deteriorated to the point where you're doing a total reconstruct, and then we get into the special assessment territory. And although we've gone through that, it's certainly something that if we can avoid it, we'd like to do that. That gets into minimizing resident impacts. Also, to get after streets before they need a reclamation, so we can just do a mill and overlay. So, as you know, the mill and overlay is just more or less taking the top 2 inches of that blacktop off, and then paving. The reclamation is taking all the blacktop off down to the gravel base. The reclamation is significantly more expensive than the mill and overlay. So looking, I think I skipped one here. So kind of getting at the reclamation summary, again, we want to extend the pavement life to minimize reconstructions, focus on mill and overlays. We also looked at seal coat and crack sealing program, and so that's integrated into the plan. And then you also notice as we get later into the presentation that we're taking out what we're projecting to be our state aid roads, and then banking that money specifically for state aid. So the pavement management plan related to what we're supporting on an annual basis with your street maintenance levy isn't going toward your state aid projects at this point. So as we discussed during the general fund budget presentation, we're planning to do East Ridge project, so mill and overlays on, reclamations on Debbie Lane and Griffin Street and the associated cul-de-sacs, and then a mill and overlay on Skyview Lane. You'll notice in the green section, Mount Hope Road, that's a MSA street or Municipal State Aid Street that's planned for 2026. The 2023 project area, this gets into the River Oaks neighborhood. You'll see 4th Street is a state aid road street, so that's not included here, but again, mill and overlays done on the kind of the south side of 4th Street. Our 2024 project is kind of continuing in that same neighborhood. You have a question, Christy? No. On the north side of 4th Street, getting into Sibley, Groff, and Gilfillan. 2025, kind of diving into our Carver Bluffs neighborhood with doing significant mill and overlays. There you can see a small section of reclamation from County Road 11 or Jonathan Carver Parkway down Carver Bluffs Parkway. And again, that we're trying to mitigate the impact and trying to stay away as much as we can from the reclamations. And mill and overlay is significantly less, but one of the things that the council has talked about in depth, no pun intended, but you could if you wanted to. In depth is that the plan is set up to avoid the reclamations, but the budget is constraining in that, if you wanted to try to tackle all the mill and overlays to avoid the reclamation, your budget kind of blows up, if you will. If you remember, to kind of fully fund the plan, we were looking at close to $1 million. And when we're starting from a street maintenance annual budget of $120,000, it just became untenable to think about a $900,000 tax levy increase. We'll keep doing that. Page up. And then just finishing out the 2026 here, we're finishing up the Carver Bluffs neighborhood, and then getting into the reclamation of Mount Hope Road as a state aid project. Little bit on seal coat and crack seal, so it's a way to extend the life prior to a mill and overlay. Program is to complement mill and overlays and reconstruction schedules. We're also looking to add newer streets in this area. So when you think of street maintenance, you might think of streets that have been, constructed for 15, 20 years. The crack seal and seal coat program helps take that street maybe and extend the life so you don't have to get into a mill and overlay. The pavement management plan integrates and allocates $30,000 into that program annually. Kind of an overview by year. You can see the estimated projects for seal coat and summary for White Pine Way, Monroe Drive, Kirchy Hill and High, Ironwood and 6 in 2025, and then rounding off Reese Graff and 4th in 2026. So in your packet, there's an overview. I think I'll actually take us up to that, the memo that I included in the packet, just to give a kind of an overview of the financing here. So as you can see, kind of where we're starting out in 2021, we had a $120,000 allocation. We had 300. Taking that in, because we didn't do a project this year, we have about $318,000 in our street maintenance fund. That's kind of a moving number as Chad and the public services team does minor street projects throughout the year. It's coded to the street maintenance fund, so that number will float a little bit. But you can see beginning in 2022, with your preliminary budget, you have a $220,000 contribution followed by a $100,000 contribution from the special capital fund, and you can see how that gives us the ability to fund the project in Eagle Ridge in 2022 and then the following years. And then I'll finish by kind of getting into the state aid road projects. Excuse me, and this is something that we'll be spending some time on probably quite a bit later into the fall of entering into the state aid program, which would include designating the streets. So the $250,000 funding level is speculation at this point. We feel like it could be higher, but what this does is kind of take out streets from kind of the tax levy portion of funding. So streets like 4th Street West and Mount Hope Road that are in the plan, but also think of perhaps Spring Creek Drive, 6th Street West. If the city moves forward with a turn back of County Road 40, that would likely be in addition to. So it gives you kind of a flavor of the streets that you'd be considering for your state aid road program. So I know that was a lot, and considering I'm only the interim city engineer, I'll do my best at answering any questions that you might have.
Brent, I have one, quick question. I remember bringing this up when we saw the original presentation, but my concern is that for the 2024 project area, it's slide maybe 9 in our packet, Elm Drive West, or what's been referred to as New Elm. I'm afraid that that's being overlooked.
Well, so we did have a conversation about
Okay.
it. At least according to like the, I don't know if I'm using the right term, but the inventory that our team did, it didn't rise to the level of need. So I would say that it would be something that we consider. We have it in our kind of notes that if we get great budget numbers, we might move that up as a strategy to kind of keep all the construction in one area and not have to go back as a random. But we are under some, as you know, some budget constraints, so we didn't feel like we should just add it just because it's close, because, you know, there's an associated cost. So good question. That's kind of where we landed as far as approach.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you look on page 32, it's actually rated very good, or good.
Good-ish.
Yeah, so it wasn't in the orange and yellow color or red
Right.
colors,
Okay.
right? It was still in a green color. I think that's what we're saying.
Okay.
It's when it was assessed or inventoried.
Yep, I just wanted to make sure that with that grouping, there wasn't.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Good.
Any other questions, comments, or a motion?
So I was just gonna make a comment.
Oh,
I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say that.
Sorry,
oh,
whenever you're
no.
ready to talk, I'm looking this way and vice versa. So.
No, I was just saying, although there isn't a lot of commenting, again, because we've seen this, and this is a big chunk of money that we're biting off at one time, and it's a little bit painful for us. I'm really comfortable with this project, and I'm really happy to see it. And and I don't want to say it's about time, but I mean, I'm glad it's here, and we're doing it finally. So thanks for all the hard work on it. So, like I said, big chunk. We have some, I've had to do some talking with residents who've had some questions about this big chunk, but I mean, everyone really kind of understands it now, so at least that I've talked to, so it's good. Thank you.
And
Agreed.
kudos to Chad and Paul Schultz that did all the street reading, so.
Yep. Yep. This was a big one coming into this budget year, and we really wanted to see this plan come to fruition. And I know we took many, many steps along the way, from, you know, assessing the streets to talking about what is conditions of streets to talking about how are we going to fund it. I mean, that whole plan, we put a lot of effort into this, but I'm really, really glad that we have a plan, because that's what I wanted to have going into 2022. Yeah, you know, we may change some things as we go through the next several years, but having a plan to take care of these streets is just really important.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the pavement management plan.
We've
I'll
got a motion by
second.
Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Just to piggyback on what you were saying and kind of everybody, I'm really proud of this council for taking the courage to spend such a chunk. This started when
This
we
was
were talking
aggressive.
about franchise fees a couple of years ago, and instead of going with a very equal solution, which would have been fine, I think that this is more equitable, and I like this. I'm glad that we're putting money towards this, because this is something that won't go away.
Yeah,
So,
agreed.
any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, we are now on communications. Any communications?
Just a brief one, you're gonna, over the course of your next few meetings, you might notice some changes in the council chambers, so related to virtual meetings, our ability to do that in the future. So the first one was, we inserted a glass piece into that door, the next steps will be to have a speaker.
Did anybody notice? Nobody noticed. did
Nobody
they?
noticed.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
It
the-
looks great,
It
the
looks
glass
great.
pan on the door.
So one of the next steps will then be to insert a speaker, so then we can close the door, so whoever's running the cameras can do that. We're also gonna be putting, when we're live on stream, both in this room and the Rapids room, so that you know when we're recording. And then just kind of some of the pieces related to integrating, hopefully seamlessly, virtual presentation. So whether it's, I know as we discussed that council is unfortunately limited based on the legislators' action about participating remotely to kind of prior COVID rules. But we still have the ability, as you probably noticed at the last meeting, to bring Paul Steinman in,
Sure.
for example. And I think as things go, we might be able to do that more in the future, or hopefully we're not in the position of another pandemic, but it'll be nice to have that resource available both in this room and in the Rapids room. And so over the course of the next month, you'll probably see some changes, and we'll continue to point those out as they occur. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Council updates. Glenn, you want to go first?
Sure. I just would like to start out by thanking the Steamboat Days Committee and Christie and Alliance for putting off a great Steamboat Days. Joy and I talked about it, And once upon a time, it was always thought of as a, well, let's just say it was an adult beverage free-for-all. That now is much more of a family-friendly event. A couple tweaks will be coming soon, I've been told. But all in all, it was a phenomenal show, and you did a great job.
Thank you.
There's no planning commission meeting this month, and I would also like to reach out to everybody and thank them for all the condolences that I've received from my dad's passing. Thank you.
Well, I was going to talk a little bit about Steamboat Days too. So we obviously all know that that happened. I have a bunch of thank yous as well to the Steamboat Days committee. They did a fantastic job, and everyone worked really hard. And it's not just that 3 days; it's the days before and the days after, and well, the year before. But it was a lot. And I want to say thank you to Chad and to Paul Schultz. They were the two that I coordinated with over a number of meetings because there's a lot of coordination that happens between city and Steamboat Days committee because we're downtown. So, and then the day of support too was fantastic on that Friday because obviously roads are closing and things like that. So, and then the team, your whole team that came out to help out that morning also was it just couldn't have gone better that morning. And then I want to say, obviously, to the city as a whole, that the city staff who has been supportive, the council who supports, and then obviously the residents who come out and support. It was really fun to watch that happen. And then I also want to say a huge thank you to Katie, our officer, who worked incredibly hard, and not because there was so many things to do for Steamboat, but she was in contact with me, and by that I mean like incidents at Steamboat. Anything that happened, she was in contact with me constantly. And, the parade's starting, and there's other calls that are happening too, so they have to go to another call. She's got the reserves ready. Christy, the reserves are down there. Get down and they'll be there waiting for you. So I can't say enough about how Katie handled the event, and then along with the rest of the Carver County Sheriff's Office too. So thanks, everyone.
All right. Lori?
I don't have any updates.
Joy?
I don't have any updates. I have a Southwest Transit Commission meeting this week.
And a large packet.
Yep.
All right, just a few updates from me. So just jumping on top of all of the Steamboat Days kudos, it was great. I don't know if it was significantly more special because we had to wait 2 years for it instead of the regular cadence, but there was just something different this year, and it was really, really great. I held some office hours this Saturday of Steamboat Days and had some folks come down, so that was great to be down here when folks were down here anyways. Let's see, the Edith Ann Award, Lori and I presented last Thursday to the Sefcars who live off of 4th and Sibley. And for years I've driven past their house or walked past it, and they have an amazing yard. So if you guys have not checked it out yet, please do. Their house is great. Their yard is amazing. The family is even better. We just had so much fun with them, and they're telling stories about how the kids would they would throw tomatoes like garbage from their vegetable plot before there were houses back there, and the kids getting in trouble, and it was only like 20 minutes that we were there, but they were amazing, and it was a lot of fun. Let's see, there was a Southwest Transportation Alliance meeting last Friday. We had a Business Alliance meeting last Friday as well. All of those are both doing well. The last update that I have is that last Thursday I got a text from Representative Nash saying that the House Capital Investment Committee is going to be coming back to Carver on the bonding tour this year, which is really good news. Hopefully the second time is the charm, but Council, for those of you who want to be there for that, they'll be here October 21st at 12:30. Now, Christy, as you remember, kind of take it with a grain of salt and maybe imagine midday sometime on October 21st. When they came 2 years ago, they ended up being at least like a half an hour early, and then when we were trying to organize the visit with Representative or Congressman Emmer, there was a little bit of fluctuation in the times. So we are exactly a month out, and I imagine that time will get a little bit more refined as we get a little bit closer to that date. But
What day of the week that is?
It's
I
a
think it's
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry to be nerdy, but if the council could know, like, or let Vicky know a week ahead of time on the 14th if you plan to attend, because if we have any more than 2, we need to post as a quorum.
Vicky, I'll be there.
Shout out to Dave.
Yeah, Assistant City Engineer.
The city engineer has some good ideas.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to just put it out that there could be a possible quorum?
Vicky,
Just-
I will not be there. I'm out of town.
And I am also out of town, so I cannot attend.
Who else is not coming?
I'll see you there.
You won't be there? Okay. You can come, it's just a quorum notice. Okay.
I should be able to make it.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, that's all set. Those are the only updates that I had. If there is nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember McKnight and a second by Councilmember Henry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Good night.